Viva la différence!
So, how would you describe a lake?
Many of us would start by describing the water.
What color is it?
Blue,
Green?
brown,
What about the clarity or transparency?
can you see your feet?
Do you see any fish, insects, birds, or other wildlife in the area?
Of course, these are the most obvious characteristics. There are other attributes we don't see.
What about nutrients in the water, soils, and vegetation, both in and around the lake?
It looks like there's a lot more to this than the color of the water.
That's why lake scientists, or limnologists, devised a way to use all of this information to describe a lake, with just a few words.
It's known as the trophic state classification system.
Trophic what?
Please don't let the fancy words scare you. It's really very simple.
Pronounced trophic. The term originated from the Greek word for nourishment or nutrition.
Ah yes, this tells us that the trophic state has something to do with the nourishment or nutrients available in a habitat.
In this instance, it refers to the ability of a water body to sustain life, also known as biological productivity.
Classifying a lake by trophic state is similar to assessing the amount of trees and vegetation in a forest.
Or the amount of plants growing in a garden.
There are several trophic state classification systems used today.
Two Swedish scientists, Forsberg and Writing, developed a system commonly used by lake scientists in the United States. It classifies lakes using 4 basic categories:
Oligotrophic,
mesotrophic
eutrophic,
and hypereutrophic.
A quick dissection of these terms can help us interpret the meaning even further.
Oligo,
Eu, hyper-eu,
meso,
trophic,
Oligo, meso.
hyper-eutrophic.
Oligo means scant or lacking. That tells us that an oligotrophic water body has a low amount of nutrition available. It supports a low level of biological productivity for life.
Oligotrophic.
Meso
Means mid-range, so we can expect a
mesotrophic.
lake to be moderately productive.
Mesotrophic.
Eu means good or sufficient, so we can expect a eutrophic lake to support plenty of algae, plants, and fish.
Eutrophic.
Hyper means overabundant, so you can expect a hyper-eutrophic lake to be extremely productive.
Hypereutrophic.
So how do we know for sure if a lake is oligotrophic, mesotrophic, eutrophic, or hypereutrophic?
We could try to guess by simply looking at a lake.
But that's not always reliable.
That's why scientists use the water quality indicators mentioned earlier. They've devised ways of measuring these parameters.
Number 1, total chlorophyll, or algae. Number 2, total phosphorus. Number 3, total nitrogen. And number 4, water clarity. Parameter number 1, total chlorophyll measurements are the main indicators used for determining a lake's trophic state. Chlorophyll are tiny green pigments found in most algae.
Because counting algae is time-consuming, we've learned to measure total chlorophyll concentrations by filtering algal cells from water samples.
This gives us an estimate of how many free-floating algae are in the water. Parameter number 2, total phosphorus measurements include all forms of phosphorus found in a collected water sample.
Phosphorus is a nutrient required by all plants, including algae. It's a prime component of fertilizers used on our lawns.
Parameter number 3, total nitrogen is a measure of all the different forms of nitrogen found in a collected water sample.
Nitrogen is another nutrient necessary for the growth of all plants. It's also a prime component of fertilizers used on our lawns. Parameter number 4. Water clarity refers to the transparency of the water, or its visible depth. It's often measured with a simple device known as a Secchi disc.
Out of these 4 parameters, total chlorophyll measurements are most commonly used to determine a lake's trophic state.
So, why do you think chlorophyll are used to determine a lake's trophic state? So, my friends, by now you must be wondering, why do we need to know all of this?
One good reason, it can tell us how much biological productivity to expect within the water body. For example,
many lakes in the Sand Hill Ridge section of Florida are oligotrophic due to low nutrient soils under the lake and surrounding area.
if we know this is an oligotrophic lake, we can expect it to support fewer fish and less wildlife.
Oligotrophic lakes are often popular swimming lakes because the water is typically very clear with less algae.
While these water bodies may be aesthetically pleasing, they support less fish and wildlife. We tend to grow slower with fewer nutrients and available food.
In contrast, many lakes in the southwest portion of Florida are eutrophic due to naturally occurring nutrients like phosphorus in the soils.
Lakes in this area are popular fishing destinations.
Why do you think eutrophic lakes have better fishing?
Trophic classification may also be influenced by other natural or human factors.
Land use changes around the lake may alter habitats that would otherwise filter nutrients before they get to the lake.
For example, a marsh or wetland might have been covered or removed. Can you think of others?
Free parking.
Stormwater runoff from surrounding land may also introduce new nutrients to the system.
Strong storm winds can stir up bottom sediments, resuspending nutrients into the water column and making them available to planktonic algae once again.
Until now, much of this discussion has focused on chlorophyll, nutrients, and water clarity. What's missing? Large plants, or macrophytes, also are an important part of Florida's freshwater ecosystems. You may have already noticed there are hundreds of aquatic plant species in Florida. Aside from our nutrient-rich soils, can you think of why Florida aquatic habitats would support such an abundance of plants? Reason 1. Lake depth.
The majority of Florida lakes are shallow, less than 12 feet deep.
Reason 2. Sunlight.
The shallow depth allows plenty of light to reach the bottom, and as a result, submersed and immersed plants are able to grow abundantly.
Reason 3. Florida's warm climate.
Our warm climate allows plants to grow year-round, whereas up north, many plants die off in winter.
For all of these reasons and more, macrophytes represent a large part of the biological productivity in Florida lakes and freshwater systems.
Our unique plant life makes Florida a popular ecosystem destination.
Florida's sunshine, warm climate, and shallow waters also make it easy for some non-native aquatic plant species to thrive and cause serious problems.
Without their natural enemies, insects, diseases, etc.,
Some non-native
plant species can alter native plant populations.
Water hyacinth grow so abundantly that they push out other plants, like our native bulrush, the tall spiky plants on the right.
When non-native plants cause environmental or economic harm, they are considered invasive. When invasive plants take over,
important native plants can be eliminated.
our natural biodiversity is destroyed.
Invasive plants can completely fill the water column or cover the surface so that fish are driven from the area.
Swimming, boating, hiking, and other uses can be affected or even dangerous in areas with invasive plants.
Aside from these problems, invasive plants present another dilemma.
If there are enough of them, it may fool us into classifying a lake into the wrong trophic state category.
Extensive amounts of submersed plants filling the water column, like this invasive hydrilla, can make the water appear very clear. It might even seem as clear as an oligotrophic or mesotrophic lake.
Don't let the clear water fool you!
Florida has more than 7,800 lakes and thousands of smaller water bodies.
They represent all 4 trophic categories: oligotrophic, mesotrophic, eutrophic, and hypereutrophic.
Aquatic plants are often a big part of the equation. Their diversity makes Florida water bodies extremely unique.
As you've just discovered, non-native invasive plants can complicate things even more.
Taking care of or managing freshwater systems is not easy. It means we have to constantly watch for changes that may be occurring and then decide what to do about them, if anything.
Is the lake changing from one trophic state to another, and why?
Are there large amounts of invasive plants in the lake?
What about the algae and nutrients? Are they increasing?
It also means working with people who may have conflicting uses.
Do you see any potential conflicts among these users? And how do plants fit into the picture? One thing is very clear.
The more we know about our freshwater systems, the more we'll be able to make better management decisions, so the animals and people who share these habitats can continue to enjoy them for generations.